Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at GCNlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set, cocked, locked, blissed? Here we go. Your dial set correctly to USA Prepares. Thank you for being in class with us today. Jason is engineering the broadcast in Minnesota at Genesis Communications Network. I'm Vincent Finelli. Dr. Shealy's with us. Dr. Shealy, are you blissed?
Yes.
Well, Dr. Shealy, I heard this rumor. And, sometimes you can't believe rumors, and sometimes you can. Well, I heard this rumor that one of our instructors was asked to not come back on the radio. And you know anything about that?
You bet.
Who do you think it might be? Who's your vote for?
Whom would I vote for?
Yeah, I mean, if you had to vote for, one of our instructors being asked to not be on the radio, who would you nominate? Who do you think that might have been?
Well, it had to be me.
I'm sorry for chuckling, Dr. Shealy, but the radio station that did that, they've lost their minds. And I can say,
they've been floundering for years, unfortunately, but that's another story.
Mm-hmm.
The station was bought by some other company recently,
mm-hmm.
and after they had 2 weeks after they bought it, they announced to me that I would either move to Saturday afternoon or they would break my contract. And we just signed a new contract in May, but they say they give me a 60-day notice. They gave me a 60-day notice, and they're the most unfriendly people I've ever met in my life. And I can't tell you exactly what I thought, but I can tell you what I did. I firstly told them where they could cram it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So
be careful how you sit down.
Yeah. My understanding is in most radio agreements, they are set for 1 year, 12 months, and the broadcaster signs the same contract as the radio station. And there are terms and conditions, and it's for 1 year. And so when I was on KWTO, I had a 1 year contract, and then it was renewed for another year. But I would never do that again. I would never have a contract. So I don't have one with GCN, and I have not had one with any other network. And I don't want one. And that way, if I do a good job, they'll want to keep me. If they can't keep me, they'll throw me overboard. Or if I decide I don't want to be with them, I can stop on a dime and just walk away. And so can they. So that's kind of the way I feel. But in your case, you had a 1 year contract that you just signed, and they violated the terms of the contract in terms of the 1 year period and just gave you 2 months and said that's it after 2 months, right?
Yep.
Okay.
And
did they say
course,
did they say why?
No.
Mm-hmm.
They are not. I don't know what they're doing, and they don't know either. And frankly, my favorite statement is from Gone with the Wind, in case you can't remember what it is.
Yeah. Well, so I knew about this, and do you have any plans?
We're trying to decide. I've tried one other radio station, and they don't have any openings.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. I do like my local call-ins. I get call-ins from all over the country, but mostly it's local people who want information.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been doing it only 32 years.
Well, let me share something with you. I might have said this to you in the past. I'm not sure. But when you and I were on that same radio station in Springfield, Missouri, we were on in the afternoons, and my broadcast followed your broadcast. The engineer, I became friends with the radio engineer. He's the guy that made all the computers work. He's the guy that did the programming. And he wasn't the guy that tuned the transmitter, but all the electronics other than the transmitter, this guy was responsible for. I'm talking about all the computers, all the national alert stuff, all of that, making sure the microphones were working properly and the mixer and the compressor and all of that. That was his job. And he told me that the number 1 and the number 2 highest rated shows on KWTO at that time were us, Dr. Norm Shealy and USA Prepares. We were the number 1 and number 2 shows, eclipsing the world famous Rush Limbaugh. And Rush Limbaugh's broadcast was on KWTO. It might even still be, I don't know. But
yes.
Yeah, so even higher rated on that radio station than Rush Limbaugh, who was their alleged number 1, draw. We were higher rated. Now, he knew this because he was able to measure the traffic. Now, not over the air traffic, but the internet traffic. And I thought that was pretty impressive. So, but the front office would never tell us that. They would never say, y'all are doing great. Just keep it up. Just keep doing what you're doing. They would always brag about Rush Limbaugh and not about us. And what I learned from that particular radio station, by the way, you're no longer affiliated with it, is that correct?
No, I've supposedly got 60 days from last Thursday.
Okay. From what I understand, the most important thing for that particular radio station, as I could tell from the boss, who would, the owner, was that the number 1 most important thing was revenue, sales. That would be radio commercial sales, selling advertising. That was number 1. Content was somewhat downstream from that. So it didn't matter as much about content as it did about selling advertising. So there you have it, Dr. Shealy. So you put all that together, and it sounds like that's what happened. Now, did you do anything did you say anything that might have raised some eyebrows?
Not until last Thursday when I learned they were firing me.
Mm-hmm.
And then I told my audience.
What'd you tell them?
I've been fired.
You told them you've been fired. Well, it does build character. So how many times have you been fired from the radio?
Once.
Oh, you got a long way to go to catch up to me. I'm in the varsity league of being fired. Well over 7 times. Actually over 8 times. And it's real easy to do. It's real easy to do. All you have to do is just tell the truth, do a good job, show up with honesty and integrity, demand honesty and integrity, not tolerate commercials that are, what would you call them? Substandard. And, there you go. I mean, by the way, do you know that there was a birthday party for the owner? I'm not going to mention his name. He was in his 80s at the time. And they had a big birthday party for him at the Doubletree Hotel, which is probably the nicest venue in Springfield, Missouri for, that kind of an event. A couple hundred people were invited. Do you know that you and I were invited to that and you did not attend? You know how I know?
Mm-hmm.
You know how I know that you did not attend? Because, in the back of the room, there was a table just for us. You and me and Mrs. Finelli. And it was just Mrs. Finelli. So what they told me, I was leaving the station on a Friday right after the broadcast around 4:00. So maybe a little after 4:00 I was leaving. I checked into the front office, wished everybody, a wonderful weekend. And, one of the gals, the boss in charge of, the radio programming, if you will, said to me, Don't think, Vincent, don't think that we forgot about you. Don't think this is an afterthought. But, there's a birthday party for the boss. And, it's going to be a real nice event. It's going to be at the, Doubletree Hotel. And, we'd like you and Mrs. Finelli to come. I said, oh, when is it? And she said, in about an hour. I said, really? And she said, yeah, Dr. Shealy has been invited too. So, you guys are going to be sitting at the same table. So, they had a special table just for us in the back, you know, where we wouldn't be noticed and where if we, created any enthusiasm, nobody would see it. But, that's the truth. So you and I and Mrs. Finelli were invited, and I felt obligated to go. And you didn't miss anything. You really didn't. Well, because it was the kind of thing where we were like different. We were treated differently from everybody else. We were just there, and you know, I went up and said happy birthday to the boss, and he hardly knew who I was. Even though I saw him every week, he hardly knew who I was. He didn't have like a moment, even to shake my hand. So that's, you know, kind of like a presidential, event where, you know, the boss or the candidate shakes hands like for like a half a second. He's shaking one person's hand and looking at somebody else. It was like that. It was like that. So, and when I got fired, it was completely different. At least they told you. When I got fired, you know, every week I'd be there 5 days, and I'd show up at the studio, and then I broadcasted remotely and built some equipment and broadcasted remotely from the farm. And then, the following Monday, the day that my, termination began, they had no idea who I was. Nobody could remember who I was. They wouldn't answer the phone. They didn't make the connection. Nothing happened. It was as if I never existed. Literally. So Friday, they knew who I was. Monday, the following Monday, they had no idea. And the proof of that is a friend happened to run into the owner of the station a while later, and he mentioned my name. He said, like, where's Finelli? Where's Vin Finelli? And the owner kind of looked like, huh? And the friend said, you know, Vincent Finelli. And the owner said, well, I might have heard of him, but I never met him. So when they throw you overboard, Dr. Shealy, they really throw you overboard.
Well, halitosis is better than no breath at all.
Well, I have some good news for you. So I knew that this happened, and so I was asking our engineer today. I said, so do we have a home for Dr. Shealy and Dr. Sergey Soren if they'd like to broadcast right here on Genesis Communications Network? And so the answer is we might be able to make that happen, Dr. Shealy. So if you want, I'll be more than delighted to talk with the number one and number two decision makers, the owner of Genesis Communications Network, Ted Anderson, and George, the radio engineer, and if you'd like, and also Lee Wickenhauser. So that's top management right there. I'll be glad to mention this, and we all might be able to make this happen. But the ball's in your court, so let me know if you'd like me to do that. We'll be right back. So Dr. Shealy, how do you feel about being let go? Is it okay with you?
Yes, of course. You know, I mean, I don't want to work with a company that behaves this way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it sounds to me like it's all about money. It really is. But you know what I don't think some of these radio stations realize, and they should realize this, but over the years, there are people who have said to me, hey, I want to do a radio show. And I say, okay. Well, if you'd like, I'll give you some advice and counsel because, you know, I've been doing it. And these are people who just want to be on like a couple hours a week. None of the people who have mentioned this to me have wanted to be on 5 days a week. So it's just, you know, an hour or two once a week. And I've given them advice and counsel, and I said, look, you have to prepare. You have to have material. You just don't show up. And for most of us, you just don't. It has to be interesting. It has to be captivating. It has to be informative. It has to be factual. You have to have some kind of a rapport with the audience. And what happened in every single one of these cases, and there have been multiple cases, and what they've done, what these individuals have done, is thought that it was really easy. Now, I'm not trying, this is not patting myself or Dr. Shealy on the back, but what I am saying is it's a commitment. It's kind of like a job. It's kind of like a job where you have a final exam every day. Every time you're on the air, you're no safety net, live broadcast. You have no idea who's going to call in, and you have to be ready for it. Well, all the individuals who I've gotten or have helped get started have not been able to do it because they thought it was real easy. All you do is, you just sit down in front of the microphone and you start talking. It's real easy, and you just do it for 1 hour and you're done. And they had no idea how complicated, how time-consuming the preparation and, so forth. They had no idea, and they all failed. Every single one of them failed. And, they thought that they were going to be able to sell things. They thought they were going to be able to use the broadcast to just, they're going to be on the air for 15 minutes and the sales are going to be flying off the shelves. And it didn't happen for them. They didn't understand that it's not like that. Do you have any comments about that? Have you helped people, try to become on the air? And have you been involved with that, Dr. Shealy?
Actually, I haven't. I made the decision in 32 years ago, in late in the year, that I wanted to try that to, just promote my work in the clinic locally. And so I met with the owner. There were two owners at the time, and we started in January. And so it's never been a problem because I've always had lots of local people interested in getting information. And of course, I've been talking up the kazoo since the mid-70s. I began doing a lot of talking around the world. And it's always been about, holistic medicine, the real medicine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I had a couple thoughts of names if you decide that you want to come on GCN, if you decide that you want to have a name for your show. I have a couple of thoughts I'd be glad to share with you. I think they're pretty neat. Of course, it's entirely up to you, but we'd love to have you here on Genesis Communications Network. It's got a huge reach. It's number one. Genesis Communications Network is the largest alternative radio network in the country. And we've got some great broadcasters here. There's over 50 of us. We've got great engineering staff. And it's a real company. It really is. And it's a very professional company. I got to tell you, our engineers want to make sure that the audio is as good as it can possibly be. And they're quite astute at it. So it's the real deal. And it's not just like a podcast that without substance. It's impressive. So we would love to
give
have
me
you
the
here.
info. I'm interested.
Okay, well, I'll tell you what. I'll send it to you, or we can talk after the broadcast. I'll tell you, how it works and all that kind of thing. And frankly, I know that you broadcast with Dr. Sergei Sorin, and he is an emergency room doctor. And so he's on the front lines of stress to the nth degree. So he knows what that's like, and he's seen a lot. And your experience and his experience make a team that's unbeatable in my opinion on the radio, unbeatable. And that's one of the reasons why I believe that Genesis Communications Network would love to have you join. But what you could do, and now I'm kind of sharing some of the secrets about how this works. Literally, Dr. Shealy, I believe that you can have the same kind of equipment that I have. You could broadcast from your farm, and Dr. Sergei Sorin could broadcast from his location simultaneously. You guys don't have to drive anywhere. You can do it separately, or you could do it together. You can have two microphones, or you could each have your own microphone separately at your own locations. And it would work great. I mean, it really would. And I believe that Genesis has the technology to do it that way. So it's not Skype, but think of it like Skype, where you just sit at your computer and your microphone and your mixer and off you go. So, yes, I'll share that with you, and we'll talk about it after the broadcast or whenever it's convenient for you. Dr. Norm Shealy's with us. I'm Vin Finelli. This is USA Prepares. And we just talked about Dr. Shealy getting fired from the radio. And that's like the best thing that could have happened. Because then his reach can go way bigger. Way bigger. We'll be right back. Dr. Norm Shealy's with us. Dr. Shealy, we've been talking about police corruption for years. And I know this is not about medicine, but this has just happened recently, and it made the Springfield News Leader. So that's the main rag in the area of Springfield, Missouri. It's the main newspaper. And they say, first let me tell you, there's a town that's located between, closer to us, our farm, than it is to Dr. Shealy's. But we would pass, if I were driving to Dr. Shealy's or he were driving to our farm, we would pass this town called Marshfield, Marshfield, Missouri. It's a little tiny town. And the main drag is through town. And so the Missouri Attorney General's office settled a lawsuit against Marshfield, the city of Marshfield, this week. And it alleged that the city police department created an illegal traffic ticket quota system and that they tried to cover it up. And they say that both parties agreed to a consent judgment requiring the city to concede that it took actions that could be construed as having a policy requiring or encouraging employees to issue a certain number of citations for traffic violations, and that would be illegal. And the idea is that they started giving more and more tickets. And they started giving more and more tickets because the mayor decided that, it was in the best interest of increasing revenue to give more tickets out. And that's exactly what they did. They started giving more and more tickets out. So the tickets from that in 2016, they had 383 tickets. Then the next year, it was 646, so, almost doubled. And then the next year, it was 1,386. So they started issuing more and more tickets. And from the top management, that would be like from the mayor, there was a proposal to spend $35,000 to hire an officer. And they figured that by spending $35,000 a year on this officer, that guy could produce a revenue of $176,000 a year. Like 5 times return on investment. Pretty good return. All they had to do was, fleece the people. So the reason I'm mentioning that, Dr. Shealy, is I'm pretty sure that you've driven through Marshfield, Missouri. Is that right?
Several dozen times.
So, class, when we tell you that it starts at the top, when you wonder how come people get shot, it's because the mayor endorses and condones the policies of the little city corporation. The mayor is the CEO of the city corporation. So when you see these police brutality tactics, it's not like the mayor didn't know about it. The mayor is involved and signs off on the training and the level of force that's used by the employees. That's how it works. So if you think about it, does the store manager at Staples or Home Depot set the tone for how polite or how aggressive the employees are going to be? Of course. Of course. So when you look at the city governments, look at the level, the level of force that's used is endorsed, condoned, approved, signed off on by the mayor. So that's the guy or gal you look at for the problems that you see or the niceties that you see. It starts from the top and it rolls downhill from there. So that is the story about Marshfield, Missouri. Any comments, Dr. Shealy?
Well, it's interesting how far such deviancy goes. To me, that's deviancy.
Yeah. Okay, so here's a term that I just learned recently. As you do, I do a lot of reading, but this is a term that I had never seen before until just recently. And it's called, and I don't even know if I'm pronouncing it right, Nomophobia, like nomophobia, Nomophobia. Is that a new term to you, Dr. Shealy?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Well, it makes sense. It makes absolute sense that you haven't heard of that. And I'm sure that you were not taught that in your residency or in your training as a medical doctor.
You're right.
And I'll tell you why. It's the dumbest thing. So nomophobia occurs in 9 out of 10 college students. And it is the fear of being without a smartphone. Literally. And I looked it up, and it's in the dictionary. Nomophobia is the fear of being without a smartphone. Now, why is that? Because young people today can't spell. They can't spell. They can't remember. They can't remember appointments. They can't figure out distance. They don't know how to get there. They don't know how to get home from there. They're stuck. And if they don't have their smartphone, they're toast. They can't function. And they have to have these frequent shots of people liking them, sending them stupid things, messages, texts, and so forth, tweets and messages, and they have to have their friends in their back pocket, which would be on their smartphone. And literally, nomophobia, Nomophobia, is a real word, and 9 out of 10 college students have that fear of being without a smartphone. That's the dumbest thing. Dr. Shealy, any comments? I'm not making this up. This is for real.
No, I believe you. I believe. I have the exact opposite, as you and I know.
Yeah.
I refuse to own a dumb phone, and I don't call them smart by any means.
Well, the reason the smartphone is because that's what the industry calls it. Now, it does a lot of things. It really does. But every once in a while, someone will say to me, "What's your cell phone number?" And I just frankly say, "I don't have one." Just like that, I don't have it. I don't have a cell phone. And they look at me like, "No, you really don't have one?" "No, I don't have one." And whenever I call the landline company, CenturyLink, because their service goes down, they always ask me, just in case we get disconnected, "What's your cell phone number?" I don't have one.
I'm in the same boat.
Yeah, I don't want one. And your term is absolutely brilliant. And if I'm quoting you correctly, your quote is something like this: "You don't want to be on tap 24/7. Is that right?
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
Absolutely correct. I absolutely do not want to be on tap.
Yeah, because pretty much, I do get some phone calls from Lou Cassidy and, others, and, Rich Sheehan and Gwyneth, and they're not asking me for things. When I talk to you, you're not asking me for things. But there are other people who used to ask me for things. And the reason they called me is because they wanted something. Now, what they wanted was an interruption in what I was doing. So it wasn't like, I had to put the bonbons down and stop eating the box of chocolates to help them. I was in the middle of something, on the tractor, under the car, under vehicles, fixing equipment, hooked up to a welder. I was doing something. And they always wanted something. And frankly, if I had a smartphone and people, had that number and started calling me, I wouldn't get anything done. I really wouldn't. So I really, feel blessed that I don't have one. Okay. So this smartphone thing is a real problem because, number one, it's preventing people from using their memories. They don't have to estimate anymore. They don't have to remember how to spell anymore. They don't have to They don't even have to have sentence structure. They can use cryptic phrases and communicate with each other. But I don't think they do it too well, because I've been on the receiving end of some of these emails that I have no idea what they mean. I literally have no idea. Do you get those, Dr. Shealy? These emails that are in the middle of a conversation, and whoever's sending them to you expects you to understand what they're talking about, but you have no idea.
Oh, yes. Nonsense.
Yeah. And I try to be polite, and I try to say, I have no idea what you're asking me. Can you say it a different way? What I really mean is, can you use real words? Real words. Okay. I have a quote I'd like to share with you, and I'll tell the whole class where this came from. And this is a direct quote from a very famous person, probably one of the most famous people in the whole world. Maybe the second most famous. And the quote is, quote, "As a Christian, I have no duty to allow myself to be cheated, but I have the duty to be a fighter for the truth and justice," end quote. And I'll tell you who that is, class. Adolf Hitler.
Oh, sounds right.
Sounds right to me. Here's another quote from Adolf Hitler. Quote, "Life doesn't forgive weakness," end quote. Sounds like two quotes that were absolutely right on the money, right?
Absolutely. Yes, you bet.
Mm-hmm. And here's another one. And I think this is true as well. And I think he was ahead of his time, because he was giving these speeches. These came from his speeches, in the in the 1930s up and through 1945. Quote, "I know that fewer people are won over by the written word than by the spoken word, and that every great movement on this earth owes its growth to great speakers and not to great writers," end quote. I think he's right there too.
Oh, absolutely.
And that's because people don't read. They don't read. Or most people don't read. Here's another quote, and this is quite interesting. And he says, basically, quote, "Basically, National Socialism and Marxism are the same thing," end quote. Now, the reason I've mentioned these quotes from Adolf Hitler, Dr. Shealy, in class, is because there was a fanaticism around Adolf Hitler. People were galvanized to what he was saying. He was the guy that was going to rescue the economy. He was the guy that was going to pull Germany out of poverty. He was the guy who was the focal point that was going to unite Germany. And people looked up to him for that. And there was a time when he spoke before the shooting started. Believe it or not, he didn't start shooting right away. Well, I've been thinking about what's happening in politics today. And we have people who are fanatics regarding Donald Trump. They get in their power boats and they've got the Trump flags. We have never had a president who's had so many flags around the president's name. Never. Even George Washington didn't have flags that said Washington, but there are Trump flags on parades, trucks, cars. Dr. Norm Shealy's with us, normshealy.com, normshealy.com. So, Dr. Shealy, what I'm saying is that in history, we've seen people in leadership roles, and there have been fanatics who have followed those leaders blindly. Adolf Hitler happened to be one example, probably the best example in modern history. And what I'm seeing is that there are people who are following President Donald Trump blindly. They are fanatics. And I've seen trucks with flagpoles stuck on them, and the flags are being, I'm talking about large flags that say Trump on them. One flag might be Trump's, one says Trump, and the other flag might be the United States flag. And as they drive down the road, I mean, this is a rolling advertisement for Donald Trump. And you see this in the videos on the internet and so forth. So, and you see them on boats, and they have these flotillas of, thousands of boats in Florida and other places. And people just can't wait to put these flags on their boats and burn fuel and waste the non-reproducible resources of the country in terms of fuel, and do all kinds of pollution in the name of President Trump. Well, what I'm suggesting is that people don't blindly follow someone just because. And people become angry if you disagree with them. I mean, people have been beaten for disagreeing with President Trump, in these protests. Well, locally in Virginia, in Lynchburg, Virginia, there's a university called Liberty University. And I know some of Liberty University's graduates. And at one time, it was a very highly regarded school for morals and values. Well, Jerry Falwell, Sr., is the guy who built Liberty University, and he galvanized Christian conservatives into what he referred to as the moral majority. So he started this university, and upon his death, his son, Jerry Falwell Jr., took over. And Jerry Falwell Jr. grew this university into a $1.7 billion, with a B, dollar endowment powerhouse. He really did. And then Jerry Falwell Jr.'s wife had an affair with one of its students and destroyed the reputation. And then we find out that Jerry Falwell Jr. and his wife were having, these events where the three of them would be involved with one of the students having sex allegedly with Jerry Falwell Jr.'s wife was having sex with one of the students, and then the student graduated, and this affair went on for about 7 years. And it's made the national news, actually, the international news, and the reputation of the university, Liberty University, has been destroyed. Because Liberty University has a code of conduct of which this is unacceptable, this kind of behavior. But yet it happened at the highest level of the university. The first lady of Liberty University was involved in this. And she was the predator. She wasn't the victim. She was the predator. And her husband knew about it, and her husband got thrown out. And rightfully so. So what I'm saying, Dr. Shealy, and I'd love to hear your comment about this, is the dangers of blindly following what people say rather than checking into, do they really believe that these people live like they say they do?
Well, reality is reality. And no matter how you might distort it, morality and ethics still are important.
What I'm saying is we've got, the president's got alleged ties to women for hire. He's got all kinds of rumors going around. And so, lots of these guys do. And what I'm saying is it's hard. We believe that people are of a higher standard than they actually are. And when you think about it, we've got a guy who's running for president. His name is Joe Biden. Guys who are older know him as Jumpin' Joe Biden because he would just keep changing his mind as to what his stance was depending on, who was paying him the most recently. So he would change his stance. So he's called Jumpin' Joe. He would flip from one side, either pro or con of the issue depending on, who was paying him. And that's what I believe. And then he's also, I've been saying that he's a plagiarist. Well, now if class, just type in Joe Biden plagiarism and you'll see. It's not just once. It's not just that he was at Syracuse University Law School and he was caught plagiarizing. and he flunked out. Yeah. That's the guy. And he keeps doing it. He can't stop. He can't stop doing it. So we got that guy running for the highest level of CEO in the world. Jumpin' Joe, the plagiarist Biden. The guy who's got memory problems. We're in a lot of trouble, class. Is that the guy that you want sitting on the red button? Is that the guy? Think about it. So maybe we shouldn't be fanatics and follow people blindly. We'll be right back with Dr. Norm Shealy. I'm Vincent Finelli. This is USA Prepares. And if you'd like to call, we'll pay for the call. 866-582-9933. 866-582-9933. Everyone all set? Cocked, locked, blissed. Hour number 2 of USA Prepares with Dr. Norm Shealy. His website is normshealy.com. 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 Dr. Shealy, we mentioned on the air that there were some books that you had available and that are out of print, and we mentioned them on USA Prepares last week, and they sold out on eBay. They had a bunch of them, and only the highest priced ones are available. And so, class, if you're interested in Dr. Shealy's books, just go to eBay if you want, and type in Norm Shealy, NORM space SHEALY.com if you want to get the out-of-print books. If you want to get the in-print books, you can go to his website, normshealy.com. Dr. Shealy, here is something that you have been saying for as long as smartphones have been around, as long as I've known you. Here's the headline of this particular article. Smartphone dim-wits. Smartphone dim-wits.
I don't call them dumb for nothing.
Yeah. Well, here's what it says. Grades suffer. This is not me saying this. This is not you saying this. This is getting more toward mainstream. Grades suffer when students use digital devices for homework help. And this is out of New Brunswick, New Jersey on study finds. It's never been easier for the average student to find a tough answer to homework questions. Okay, they do a Google search and they get all kinds of answers. And so a study from Rutgers University, it's in New Jersey, finds that smartphones and easy access to the internet are harming modern students' retention of information in the long run, and it's resulting in lower grades. So researchers note students who usually receive high marks on homework assignments but lower test grades, it's related to using the internet for completing their homework assignments, rather than reading the other material that they should be reading and committing to memory. Now, what would be the relationship to medicine and medical students? What would your thought be for a medical student using a smartphone for the answers, Dr. Shealy, compared to the way it used to be? What was it like, and how would the smartphone alter that?
Well, I obviously, when I was in medical school, there was no computer, all that kind of stuff. It was a medical index. It was about, 10 or 12 inches thick. And it had, all the major published medical articles of the last year. And if you really wanted to find something, you had to spend a lot of time trying to find the articles that way. You had to read. And in my opinion, something about reading is more important than listening. Now, in listening, it can be helpful. If you've got a great professor, it's really worth listening. But if you don't have a great professor, reading is definitely the way to learn.
Okay, and in that regard, Dr. Shealy, I get a lot of emails with links to YouTube videos. And frankly, if I had a choice of getting an email with a link to an article that described the same thing as a YouTube video, I would much prefer having a link to an article than a link to a YouTube video. Because
I would say I turned down 90% of YouTube. I don't
You
listen.
mean-
I don't take the time. I'm not interested.
Okay. Well, I feel good that you say that because I didn't want to be alone. I get so many links to YouTube videos that number one, I don't have time to watch them. Number two, they take too long. And number three, I could have read that, whatever it is that takes 20 minutes or 15 minutes to watch on YouTube. I could have read it in 2 minutes, maybe 1 minute.
Absolutely. I took the Ellenwood speed reading course back in 1961. I could read 1,000 words a minute.
And your comprehension?
Excellent.
Okay, well, I took that same course a little bit after that. Probably, well, no, I was in the 60s. It was in the 60s. And Dr. Shealy, I was reading at 2,000 words a minute.
Wow.
Well, don't get too excited. With zero comprehension. So I had to slow down a lot. They couldn't believe how fast I could read, but I couldn't remember anything. Absolutely true. I'm not embellishing that in one iota, but no, I did take it, and I probably settled in for really high comprehension. I was probably down around at that time when I was pretty young. I was dyslexic, so that was one of the reasons why I took the class, and the words would jump around on the page. It was really tough for me to read, so I probably settled in around a couple hundred words a minute, which was, not too fast. It was pretty slow. Most students would start around a couple hundred words a minute, but in order for me to understand it, that's what I had to do. But now I read much, much faster than that, and so I would rather read it. And so here's what happened on this particular study. This was in Rutgers, New Jersey. The students took part in the study over an 11-year period, 11 different classes, and they compared the test scores. So between 2008 and 2017, what they found was that in 2008, about 14% of the students scored lower on tests than on homework assignments. So what that tends to indicate is that under the pressure of a test, the students would score, 14% of them would score lower than in homework. Now, at homework, you have lots of time if you want to take the time, and you've got all kinds of study materials. And so naturally, you think that homework assignments, if the students actually did them, would score higher than on tests. Now, in 2017, so 11 years later, well, they found out, let's see, not 11 years, from 2008, 14% of students scored lower on the test than on homework. In 2017, 55% scored lower. Now, that's because it seems to me that the reason would be they can't remember. They can't remember when they're in. That's what tests are typically about. Using your memory to come up with the correct answer. Isn't that what a test is?
You bet.
Demonstrating that you can remember how to do it. So when in surgery, Dr. Shealy, the last thing I want to do is have one of these, young students performing surgery on me, one of these students that can't remember, has to pull out a smartphone and say, I can't remember exactly what I'm supposed to cut here. And what do I do when the bleeding gets out of control? I don't want one of those students working on me. I want somebody who actually has experience and who has it committed to memory. That's what I'd like. Actually, that's what I would insist on. So there you have it.
My favorite quote of all time. I gave a talk on nutrition to the Greene County Medical Society at their request. It was an hour long. There was an hour of questions afterwards. And one of the physicians said, Norm, where do you get all this information? I said, from PubMed. He said, what's PubMed?
Are you serious?
Now, do you think I'd joke about something like this? I mean, I spend hours a week I want the real thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So here we have physicians whose business it is to heal bodies, to give advice and counsel to people who are sick in some way, and they don't do the research. That's what you're saying, right?
Exactly.
That's necessary to be proficient in their area of specialization or expertise.
Got it.
Okay. Well, speaking of lazy, and I think that's what we're talking about, one of the things that goes into the equation of what you're describing with physicians not knowing, they're being lazy. Well, there's another study, and this study is pretty disgusting. And that is that 1 in 6 people, and because now with the COVID, the lockdowns and working from home, etc., people are participating in conference calls from home. But 1 in 6 has reported that they are working on conference calls from the toilet. So they're sitting down there with their laptop or notebook computer on their lap, on the toilet, conducting business with conference calls. No kidding. They're in their pajamas, they're or less, and they're on the can.
I've never even thought about taking a computer to the toilet.
Now, that's nothing. Okay, that's nothing. So there was another study, and they found that 92% of people take their mobile phone into the bathroom.
Wow.
And more than 60% of them say that they are checking social media while they are relieving themselves. Another 49% are checking the news. So I guess they're multitasking. They're almost half of the respondents are checking the news while they're on the can. That's unbelievable to me.
I wouldn't want to do a culture of their computer.
I'll bet it would look very much like the culture that you would find from a sewer pipe. Well, okay. So those are some of the things that we have found with smartphones and how people are using them, etc. Okay. Missouri reported a record number of COVID-19 deaths in a single day on Saturday, 2 days ago. So we smashed the record for deaths, COVID-19. And here's what it says. So far, and this is KansasCity.com. So the update for August 29th, we've had 82,000 cumulative cases, 1,496 deaths, and 1,198 new cases with 32 deaths in 24 hours, and a 12.2% positivity rate. The website is normshealy.com, NORMSHEALY.com. Dr. Shealy is a medical doctor, and he is also a doctor of philosophy. Both. Dr. Shealy, so we've had a record number of COVID-19 cases for this week just passed. In Missouri, 82,000 roughly cumulative cases, roughly 1,500 total deaths, and roughly 1,200 new cases and 32 deaths in the last 24 hours with a 12.2% positive testing rate. Any comments of what you think causes that? Or what? Yes.
Slightly worse than the dumb phone.
Okay.
There's not a fact that has been published by any side of what this whole they could Pucademic is, it is accurate. The CDC and the FDA and other government organizations are evil to the core by insisting that people be signed out as dying or having this disease without proof of it. I've had numerous reports of people saying they know someone who committed suicide who was signed out as dying of the virus. I don't believe anything that any media says. Period.
And you know, that's one of the planks to destroy a country, is to create confusion within the populace, to absolutely confuse us. And they're doing a fabulous job. The mainstream media from every level, from state governments to county governments to the federal government, the level of confusion, the level of changing their minds. If some of these policies are laws, it's impossible. It's impossible to keep up with them because they keep reversing and re-reversing and re-reversing their positions. And it's impossible to know, for the average person to know what the latest is, what the latest reversal of the position of mask, no mask, lockdown, etc. is. Nobody can keep up with it. And it's causing the police to beat people up for non-compliance of something that some rule that has been revoked. So nobody can keep up with it, and it's really making people angry. And so what we've learned from this is that we are now seeing how stupid the people who we thought were smarter than that are. And I'm talking about the people who have been selected to represent us. Those people are really pretty dumb. And they are really illiterate in terms of knowing what is really happening. And this proves, and dishonest, right? And this proves that you don't have to be very smart to be selected as a representative. What you really need to be is pliable, someone who is easily bribed by the deep state or by the Committee of 300 or their lackeys. That's what it's proving. Dr. Shealy, we've received some emails from some of our students, and they have written, and you can do this too, class, instructor at USA Prepares. I've kept this email address, instructor@usaprepares.com. And one person wrote muscle cramps, these sleeping at night and muscle cramps in the legs. Your thoughts? I know you've discussed this before, but
well,
you should do it again.
Top of my list is always magnesium lotion. That's the most common cause of muscle cramps. Deficiency.
Okay, a deficiency in magnesium absorbed best through the skin. You've proven that over and over again. And you can get the magnesium lotion or the magnesium spray. Not a commercial class. I use it. It works. It absolutely works. It's on the website, normshealy.com, normshealy.com. What about twitching of the eyes, Dr. Shealy? I remember when I was younger, sometimes my eyelid would just twitch and it'd go away. And it wasn't like constant. It would just happen, and, years later it might happen again for a few seconds. What causes that?
Well, it's a stress. Every symptom means that some stress is overriding the normal system. All disease is a malfunction, if you will, because of more stress than that individual can handle. It can affect any organ in the body.
Wow. Very simply said, very powerful statement. We'll be right back with Dr. Norm Shealy. Plus, I'd like to give you a little tip. I might be doing some tips later on this week. Things from my unfinished, unpublished, not available for sale book. But one of the things that I'd like to mention to you from that book is about surge protection. It's real simple. And I found on eBay, I sent this information to some of our instructors who I thought might benefit from it. This is a surge protector that you can plug just, if you have a duplex receptacle, you just push this thing on. It becomes like a cover plate with 6 outlets. So it just installs in 10 seconds, maybe 3 seconds. And all you do is just push this over, unplug whatever's in that wall outlet, and push this on, and now you have 6 outlets instead of 2. And built in are metal oxide varistors, and it attenuates surges starting at 330 volts. And it does it on all 3 legs of the North American power system. So it's the right way to do it. And the reason I'm mentioning this, and I'll tell you how you can find it, it's on eBay. If you buy one of them, it's $6.99 shipped. $7 shipped, okay? If you buy 2 or more, if you buy 2 to 3 of them, it's $6.64. Now, I wouldn't recommend anything that I haven't bought. And I bought 2 of these. So I paid $6.64 each shipped from eBay. Now, they are new old stock. And what happened was, I believe, I did a little bit of research, and there was a power utility in Florida that I believe was offering these to their customers. And they had extras. This is my belief. Now, these are top quality, well made by a company called Leviton, Leviton. It's an old company. It's an old American company. And they make electrical devices like plugs, receptacles, outlets, and other equipment. Well, if you type in, go to eBay and you type in Leviton, Leviton, gray as in color, Gray, 6-outlet, 6, the number 6, dash outlet, space, surge protector, you'll find it. Okay. And they have more than 10 of them available. $6.99 if you want one. And you can buy up to 10 of them or more, and they go down to $6.15 each shipped. Okay. I bought them. And they're outstanding. And I bought 2 of them. I have one in the kitchen and I have one in the studio. Now here's why here's what you do with it. You plug it in to the outlet closest to your breaker panel. Whatever's closest to it. And it will protect downstream most of the other receptacles in your house. So all you have to do to have some surge protection for your whole house is to just get one of these things and plug it into the outlet nearest to your breaker panel. And it will help protect all the other outlets. Not completely, but it'll be way better than doing nothing. Now, why am I saying this? Because at the bottom of the hour news, you just heard that there are a couple hundred fires going on in California. And every time there's a fire, electricity is taken out of service. The grid gets shut down in certain areas. And the power goes on and off and on and off and on and off. And that creates the surges, and that will destroy your equipment, or it can destroy your equipment. So, for less than $7, you can have some protection. Okay? So if you have any questions about that, you can call me in another broadcast, and I'll be glad to flesh that out for you, tell you how it all works. You might want to call in on Friday. Bert's going to be back with us on Friday. That'd be a good time to talk about it. So, I just wanted to share that. Dr. Shealy, any questions about that? Because I sent you a copy of that.
Where do you put the second one?
Okay, well, here's how it really works. So in North America, in the North American wiring system, we have, I'm going to refer to this as by colors. So in your breaker panel, you have a red wire coming in, a black wire coming in, and a bare wire coming in. And between the bare wire and the red is 120 volts. Between the bare wire and the black wire is 120 volts. Between the black and the red is 240 volts. So there's a 50-50 chance that you'll be protecting at least half of your wiring in your house by just plugging the first one in. Now, if you can find 2 different receptacles that are on 2 different legs of that breaker panel, you'll be protecting the whole house pretty well. But you want to get it close. And let me explain why. So the closer you are to the breaker panel, the better this is going to work. And the reason is electricity is lazy. And electricity wants to have the closest path to ground as possible. So when lightning strikes, let's say the power lines coming into your farm, or power lines just down the road, it's looking for the ground. And it will keep traveling until it is fully attenuated, the lightning. And if it finds your house, if that's in, the quickest way to ground, the shortest distance, if it finds a surge protector first, the surge protector will attenuate a lot of that surge to the ground, which will prevent downstream damage. So let's say you have a surge protector Where's your breaker panel? Is it near the kitchen?
It's right outside the kitchen in the hall that enters the house.
Oh, okay. So, and that's the way it may be in most houses. So if you have a breaker panel on the other side of the kitchen wall and you plug this surge protector into an outlet that is closest to the breaker panel, that is going to be the closest attenuation to the ground. So the surge protector will send that stray electricity right to ground quickly. Now, farther away from that is your living room, right? In terms of electrical wiring, there's more feet of electrical wire to get to your living room and your bedroom, etc., than to get to that outlet in the kitchen. Is that right?
Right.
Okay. So that means that your bedroom, let's say you have a clock radio or something like that in your bedroom, that would be more protected because the surge is going to want to find something closer than going all that way to your clock radio because it's farther away. So it's going to want to go right to ground, right from the kitchen. Okay. So, that's the best way to do it. Now, the reason I said two of them is because you have two different legs in your breaker panel. One is going to be the red and one's going to be the black. Well, if you can work with someone and start shutting off breakers, and what you do is you have someone at the breaker panel and someone at the outlet, and you've got, this thing has a little red light, an LED that tells you that it's connected and it's working. So you have someone throw a circuit breaker on the circuit panel that they think is that particular outlet. And then, so you'll identify that because the light will go out when they shut that breaker off. Then they turn it back on. And then adjacent to that, either up or down, the next breaker, either higher or lower in your breaker panel, is going to be the other leg of that 240 volt circuit. And you find an outlet that's real close that the next breaker, either up or down, from the breaker that you just identified in your kitchen as being the breaker that controls that outlet with the surge protector. You go one breaker up or one breaker down, and you find one that you can plug in the other surge protector. Now you're protected on both sides of that 240 volt leg. That's how you do it. So it's going to be, and it'll work. It'll work. And the reason I know this is back in the 80s, I called, I was in charge of a computer department at a bank. And I wanted uninterruptible surge protection and power protection for our computers. So the largest, best company that I could find was American Power Conversion, APC. I called their engineers and I said, so here's my question. I want to buy your equipment, but I need the answer to this question first. So if I have a string of outlets in a room, okay, it's one circuit and there's a string of outlets. So, power comes into the first outlet box and then it daisy chains to the second outlet box, the third, the fourth, the fifth, the sixth, etc. And I plug your surge equipment into one of those outlets. We'll say it's the first one in the chain. And, I know my equipment is protected if I plug it into that outlet connected to that surge protection device. But what about downstream? What about the last outlet in that chain? Is that protected as well? And they said, wow, no one ever asked that question before. We'll have to check it out. So they did. They called me back and they said, yeah, it is. It is. And they were surprised because they didn't know. And they said, yes, it is protected, but at a voltage of 75 volts higher. So typically the voltage that your surge protector will work, it'll attenuate everything above 330 volts on a 120 volt circuit. But downstream, even if you don't have a device plugged into that surge protector, downstream the outlets are protected at 330 plus 75 volts. So 405, 405 volts. So the answer is you get some protection, and it absolutely works. So that's why I'm recommending this. And it's real easy, and it's like $12 or $14 for two.
Great.
Now, I know I said that really quickly. Any questions about that, Dr. Shealy?
Go for it.
Okay. So class, Leviton, Leviton, Gray, Gray, 6-outlet surge protector. And what it has is coaxial cable TV, satellite TV protection as well. I'm not using that part of it. So it's got these 2 threaded F-type connectors on the top. We don't use those. We don't have that. We don't have satellite TV here, or any TV actually. So, but the 6 outlets with the surge protector is a great way to go. Okay. Dr. Shealy, in Australia, Melbourne, Australia specifically, they had a big storm. Gwyneth was telling us about it. And they were cautioned to boil their water due to contamination, because what happened was the pumps stopped working. The sewage treatment pumps stopped working, and raw sewage cross-connected with the fresh water supply. Happens all the time. Whenever there's a power failure and whenever there's a big storm, water runs downhill, there's flooding, the sewage treatment plant is at the lowest point of a city or right outside the city, and it connects to the freshwater drinking supply. Happens all the time. And so they recommended to the residents of Melbourne, Australia, and the suburbs that they boil their water due to contamination. Can you describe for our class why boiling should be done for water and what it does? Will boiling remove the chemical toxins? Will it remove the pollutants as well as the bacteria, or just the bacteria? What are your thoughts on boiling water? And does it make
bacteria and viruses?
Mm-hmm. Okay, it will kill bacteria and viruses. At what temperature do you need to boil, and for how long?
Now that I'm not positive, but I would say a minimum of 30 minutes, and the temperature is going to be, of course, above 212 degrees.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So if you've got, if you're going to use a spaghetti pot, that kind of a thing, stainless steel pot, you keep the lid on it, you can boil it, and the boiling will kill the bacteria and the viruses. But will it kill the chemical contaminants like the Roundup and the gasoline and the oil and the insecticide? No.
Absolutely not.
Okay. So that's the point, class. Boiling water is good for bacteria and viruses, but it does not purify the water. It does not. We'll be right back. Here's something that's not often talked about, but, names for babies. And there's been a survey, Dr. Shealy, in class that 72% of the respondents believe that a unique name will help their child stand out from the crowd. Well, that makes sense, right? But do you really want to have your child have a name that is unique to the point where it is ridiculous? So, Dr. Shealy, when we were picking names for our children, we looked at names in the family. We looked at my dad's first name. We looked at his brother's first name. We looked at my godfather's first name, my grandfather's first name, etc. And it was kind of a point of honor naming our children after people we had the highest regard and respect for in our family. And that's what we did. And did you do something similar, Dr. Shealy, when you were naming your children?
Oh, yes.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to keep the initial CNS, because it means Central Nervous System.
Mm-hmm.
I've never gone by my first name. I've always used my middle name. But our second child, we named Craig Norman Shealy to keep the CNS, Central Nervous System. And interestingly, he became a psychologist.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And how about your daughter?
We had picked out Laura for some reason. I don't remember why, but but we had 4 friends who chose to name their daughters Laura, so we named our daughter Laurel. And our eldest, Brock, we named for Shardy's father, who was a wonderful friend of mine as well. And so, yeah, you pay attention to those things.
Yes, and that's what we did. Well, here are some names, new age names. Now, these may stand out on a resume so much, and these aren't the most, outrageous of names. These are just, just over the center line, I guess, of, what I would consider, unusual. But, I would be inclined, if I were reading resumes for employment, I would, believe it or not, I would read the resume, but my first judgment would be on the person's name. Believe it or not. I mean, you can say that, I am sexist or I have some kind of, bias. And the answer is, yeah, I do. I do. And so here are some new age boys' names. Jaspin, Jaspin. Okay. Here's another one. Now, Ranger. Now, I know a dog named Ranger and I know a car named Ranger or a truck. And there was a TV show called The Long Ranger. Here's another one. Renlow, Wrenlow. That's new to me. Eastley, Eastley. Eastley. I guess that would be kind of like northerly or southerly or westwardly. Here's another one. Albion, Albion. Here's another one. Tovin, Tovin. And then here's one named after a tree, cedar. Now for new age girls' names, Mavery, Maevery. Here's another one. I don't even know how to pronounce this. Idalia, Idalia. Evabeth, Evabeth, one word. Tessadora, Tessadora. Anave, Anaveeh. Jessalee, Jessalie. Sylvia Lee, Sylvialie. And Elizio Bell. So the point, I guess, is if you want your child to stand out by name, yeah, you can do that, but it's a double-edged sword. And you may find, or the child may find, that is an albatross around the neck of the child when trying to get a job. Any thoughts, Dr. Shealy?
Well, yes, I think it's very important to put a lot of thought and research into looking at that.
Yeah,
and
because
it's a choice.
Yeah, because your child is going to be saddled with that for the rest of his or her life, unless he or she decides to change it. And at what time does that happen? So, really, class, think about that. Shantice, Shirel. I mean, really? It's really a double-edged sword. So if you want to be unique, and there are even girls who have the name Unique. Unique. With an accent mark. So class, think about that because, it will last them the rest of their lives. So put some thought into it. I'm sure you will. I'm not talking about our class. I'm just talking about other people that do these silly, dumb things. Dr. Shealy, thanks so much for being with us today and sharing your medical wisdom. And I will. When would you like to chat? And I can tell you about GCN.
11:30 would work.
What time?
11:30 would work. I have a patient at 11, but if you're available at 11:30, I would love to talk then.
Sure, just call me.